Hello. So, kind of at the moment in regards to the Digimon Tamers videos, I'm kind of going a little bit back and forth on different subjects. This video is going to be about the bio-emerged Digimon, so the Digimon that come into the real world during Digimon Tamers that the Tamers end up having to fight and destroy, or that get sent back to the digital world depending on stuff. This list does not include the Devas because they will have their own list. Or their own 2 or 3 videos, depending on how I structure those. I haven't quite made that decision yet. But so this one is about, as I said, the bio-emerged ones that throughout the course of Digimon, there are the instances where these, very like foggy, little areas pop up throughout the city and stuff like that. And those ones are an indication of where the digital world and the real world are kind of overlapping, where there's like a gate or so that gets formed, and this generally allows for a Digimon to appear. One of these fields did appear when when Gilmon was born. One of them did appear, I believe, when Rika was establishing her bond with Renamon. I even think when Henry and Terriermon became came into the real world. I think there was even like a cloud then too. Um, Calamon even would have, come in through one. It's just an indicator of these are Digimon that are coming in from the digital world. So by technicality, pretty much any of the Digimon that appear to the real world do qualify for this, but this list is just mostly about the ones that the Tamers end up having to fight. And such. So we're going to go through them. So these are, I believe, just in the order that they appeared in the series, barring at the end where I am going to talk about the ones that appear in the Digimon movies, the 2 Digimon Tamer movies. So this one, the first one, is Goblimon / Fugamon. So when Goblinmon, however you want to put it, appeared, he ends up getting attacked by Rika and Renamon. And at one point in time, he does end up digivolving and turns into Fugamon. Yeah, kind of just looks like they sunburned Ogremon, in all honesty. And that is one thing that I do kind of like that they did with Digimon Tamers, because like for Digimon Adventures, we kind of get some of these predetermined sets of like how stuff digivolves, what it looks like when it digivolves. The lines. And then with Digimon Tamers, we get a little bit more of like an adjustment to that a little bit for some of the different Digimon. And then Digimon Frontier does the same thing, where we get like slight alterations for some stuff, and then Digimon Savers, and then pretty much all the other Digimon series down the line have these kind of like they showcase different evolutionary lines for some of the different Digimon, which is very much a prominent thing in the games and stuff like that as well. So Renamon and Rika are the 2 that deal with Goblimon / Fugamon, and Renamon just takes them out fairly quickly with a Diamond Storm and destroys them, and then absorbs their data. Most of the Digimon that bio-emerged tended to just have their data absorbed by whichever Digimon defeated them. Mostly just because that was like the initial way of like showing, oh, a Digimon beat this one, so now they absorbed it, now they're stronger. Next up, we have Gorillamon. So Gorillamon actually kind of has like a twofold thing. So Gorillamon, when Henry is originally playing the Digimon game that his father got him, Gorillamon is the Digimon in there that like him and Terriermon are fighting, that he's fighting with Terriermon. And then later on, Gorillamon actually ends up manifesting into the real world. And Takato and Henry, like Henry doesn't want to have Terriermon fight Gorillamon, because the last time Terriermon digivolved, he kind of lost control and he wasn't able to like come back from it very easily, or it took a little bit for him to be able to like retake control of his power again. And eventually, basically, what ends up happening is, of course, well, they have to fight Gorillamon. And this is just one of those moments where it's just like, Henry is very much the pacifist, doesn't like, trying to destroy the Digimon and stuff like that. We also see that Gorillamon has actually gotten stronger because, like, before he bioemerges, we see him defeat some Numamon, a Vegiemon, and a Monochromon, which Monochromon were pretty decently good Digimon. They're giant dinosaurs. Numamon and Vegiemon not as much, but still. And Gorillamon's intent is to find Terriermon and Henry and go after Terriermon for revenge. So what we kind of see happen is, of course, Henry, as I stated in his video several times, is very much this pacifist type of a character, which also, pacifism is not bad. It just depends on, like, how far you're willing to go with it. And sometimes there are moments where you have to fight, and that's kind of one of the things that, like, Henry figures out, that there's different types of fighting. There's fighting that's just fighting for the sake of fighting. There's fighting for protection. There's fighting for freedom and stuff like that. And Henry ends up actually, during this time, the way that him and Terriermon actually end up defeating Gorillamon is they end up using one of the modify cards that is like training grips, and it like grabs onto Gorillamon so it can't move, and then that's when Terriermon is able to defeat it. And what ends up happening is that Henry tells Terriermon not to absorb the data, which Terriermon doesn't, and Henry does it in hopes that the data will return to the digital world and possibly Gorillamon will be reborn. Now, as I stated in previous videos, we never get an indication that the Digimon and Digimon Tamers have the ability to be reborn, because we never see anything like a primary village or a village of beginnings, or however you want to put it, that we see it in the other series. We never get an indication of that in the Digimon Tamers world. Next up, we have Vilemon, or I think the original translation of it is literally just like Evilmon. Weird bat thing. Giant ass mouth. So it bioemerges near the school, and Takato and Gilmon are actually, it's actually summoned by, at one point in time when Gilmon and Calamon end up doing like the designs all over the chalk designs all over the soccer field, and that kind of makes the bioemerge field show, the immersion field, or however they refer to it as. Also, all of these different fields are being tracked by Hypnos throughout the course of the series. We see Yumaki and Riley and such, they're the ones that are in charge of like tracking these and trying to determine where the Digimon are going to emerge. I think they're just called an emergent. These are the ones that generally get referred to as like wild ones throughout the course of the series. Digimon that are not connected to a tamer of any kind. So, Hypnos is tracking them and everything, and Calamon, because Calamon is a connection to the digital world through it being the catalyst, it makes these designs, and that kind of helps make the, the fog, the gates open and allows the Digimon through. So what they end up doing is Takato and Henry and Terriermon arrive, and I believe Gilmon is also there, or shows up with them or whatever. And they end up destroying the Vilemon. This is part of one of the first battles that Takato is part of, and he takes a little while to, actually kind of get his rhythm down with his modify cards and stuff like that, and he has a little bit of a problem with that. But Takato, Rika and Renamon are actually the two that actually show up and actually destroy the Vilemon. And, just defeat it, and then Renamon just absorbs it. And, during some of these different battles and stuff like that, we're seeing, the different tamers styles showcase. Takato's still learning his. Henry tries to do as little violence as possible. Rika and Renamon are just, power and defeating them and absorbing their data. Then we have Alomon, who is supposed to be, who's a giant dinosaur Digimon. He's like an Allosaurus. Which I really like his design. In all honesty, I'm like, you get a dinosaur Digimon. I want that one. What? It's colorful and it has jewelry. I want that one. Um, most of these Digimon tend to be, Vilemon might be a rookie Digimon, I'm not sure, but most of them tend to be like champions, um, or ultimate champions or the next level up. Rookies, champions, and such at that point in time. So Alamon, giant dinosaur. I don't think it ends up being around for a huge amount of time. And yeah, most of these Digimon just get taken care of pretty quickly. Um, uh, Based on stuff like they cause a little bit of damage or something like that for wherever they were, whatever they emerged and everything. And the tamers show up because like their detectors, their D-arcs or whatever they're called, their digivices, allow them to track where the emergence fields are, and they're able to get to them. So there's that. Alamon ends up defeaed by Renamon. Is defeated by Rika and Renamon. I believe it is Renamon is able to freeze it, and then she, via modify cards from Rika, and then, destroys it and absorbs the data. Again, getting these very different variations between how the tamers work. And of course, throughout this whole time frame, one of the reasons that Rika and Renamon are destroying all of the Digimon, destroying all of the bio-emerged Digimon and stuff, and absorbing their data is because they wanted to get that Renamon can get stronger so that Renamon can digivolve, because Renamon has not digivolved throughout the course of this. Throughout that whole setup at that point in time. And that has been Rika and Renamon's goal. Then we get to Dokuamon. Giant spider one. We've seen Dokuamon before. Some of these Digimon, like, we've seen counterparts to them in, like, Digimon Adventures. Or different versions of them in Digimon Adventures. So, yeah. Some of them are newer, some of them aren't. So we have Dokuamon shows up, bioemerges, and Rika and Renamon show up to try to deal with it. Renamon, Rika gets trapped in some of the thread, and then Renamon is able to save her, but Renamon ends up also getting bit by Dokuamon and getting very badly hurt. And during this time frame is actually when Rika actually shows concern for Renamon for kind of the first time. And, Renamon then is able to digivolve. Because in that moment there is this concern there that's not just Rika being cool-headed and just like swipe modify card after swipe modify card or whatever. Not that she didn't do that. This is where she uses like her Sneemon modify card and stuff, but Renamon digivolves and digivolves into Cubimon for the first time. And what ends up happening, she just, Cubimon destroys Dokuamon and then absorbs the data. All fine and good. And, they have a bit of a breakthrough, and then they kind of go 3 steps back again. And then we have Davidramon, which actually, in all honesty, I've always loved Davidramon's design. It's, it's like giant black dragonoid with like these long arms and these red awesome looking claws. And, it's got like 6 or 8 eyes or whatever it is. And we see these things way back in Digimon Adventures for the first time because they're used by Myotismon at one point in time to deal with the Digidestin there. And then I think later on in Adventures 2.0, I believe Ken, when he's the Digimon Emperor, has at least one of these that he uses as his like main thing that he rides around on when he's looking at a bunch of destruction of the digital world and stuff like that. So I've always loved these designs for whatever reason. Yes, they are evil, quote unquote, Digimon and whatnot. But again, um, Digimon are always this odd comparison of things because like there are Digimon that are like clearly bad, like Myotismon and Devimon and stuff like that are clearly just straight up evil, mother effers. And then there's Digimon that are, like good, that very much embody these setups of good. And then there's, Digimon that are in the middle because there's like Leomon and Ogremon and like, yeah, Ogremon kind of goes down the bad path, but then in the end he makes the right choice of like helping the Tamers or helping the Digidestin and stuff like that in the first series. So there's that. And then there's, of course, like, Gatomon is a perfect example of this Digimon that is like forced to go down this road of darkness and then chooses again to become good. So, it's not that like a good person could not have a Davidramon for a Digimon. They could. And it could be a very sweet Digimon. It's just that's what its data decided that it's going to turn into. But they do tend to be a little bit more of a representation of like evil type of thing. But I just always love their designs. But back to the story. So, Davidramon actually kind of appears, at one point in time when Takato is out and about. There's sightings in the park of like Itmon, and Takato thinks that it's Gilmon that is causing problems or whatever. And Davidramon shows up, and actually their teacher, Miss Asaji, is there, and it like just like flies past her, and it's just like she just thinks it's like this huge burst of wind or whatever. But this is the first time that Gilmon digivolves into Growlmon, and it's when they're fighting against Davidramon. And so we get that, and Growlmon destroys it and absorbs the data and everything. It's not that Takato and Henry don't let their Digimon absorb the data. It's just Henry doesn't do it very much with Terriermon, and Takato does it every now and then with Gilmon, depending on stuff. But this is kind of one of the more first battles where Takato and Gilmon are actually much more in sync, and of course Gilmon digivolved, as I said. So there's that. Then we have Ice Devimon. Oh, good God. Traumatic childhood flashback showing up right now with this guy. Devimon, or Ice Devimon, obviously is, so I'll go into a little bit more, but like he's obviously like a reference back to the original series with Devimon, and he's just another variation of Devimon. Except this one has much more ice-based powers. I don't remember, in regards to like, the Digimon evolution trees and stuff like that, if, Digivolution, excuse me. I don't remember if Devimon and Ice Devimon are both like champion level, or if like Ice Devimon is like the next level up or not. I don't remember exactly. They don't go into as much of that when it comes to some of the bio-emerged Digimon, but the thing is Ice Devimon is one of the ones that actually leaves like a lasting mark on what happens. So Ice Devimon shows up, and he is actually kind of, it's confirmed throughout stuff that he says, that he is the serial killer Digimon who absorbs as many Digimon as he can to become more powerful. And he bio-emerges into the real world, and he like stalks Rika, and then he just like captures her and takes her into like this like ice orb palace thing that he made, which is like literally sticking off the side of a building. And I'm like, okay, people, is nobody looking up? This is before cell phones were a major thing in the human world. So we're like a major thing where you can look at stuff all the time on your phone. Nobody's looking up at this damn building and seeing this giant freaking ice cocoon thing on the outside of it or whatever. Nobody's paying attention to that. And Takato and Henry are the two that notice it. So Ice Devimon takes Rika there, and in his frozen lair on top of the skyscraper, and he shows her all of these different Digimon that he's like captured over the years and destroyed and absorbed their data. Keeps them as like trophies around the area, which is very disturbing. And he's like I want you to become my tamer. You know, don't worry about Renamon. He like demands or kind of tries to coerce Rika into wanting to become his tamer as opposed to Renamon's tamer. And he's like going into this spiel of like, you're so cold hearted and everything like that for, like the way that you treat your mother and your grandma and stuff like that. And even the way you treat those other so called friends of yours, Takato and Henry and stuff. And even the way you treat your Digimon is somewhat cold hearted at times in regards to just wanting to find a way to get Renamon to Digivolve. So like he's like tried to coerce her into it. I think in the English dub, there's like a few references to like Beauty and the Beast in that regard, um, in that setup. And I don't remember if they had the same guy that voices Devimon to come back and play Ice Devimon. I do not remember off the top of my head, but I mean, that would have been a decision I would have gone with is like, yeah, let's just bring the same guy back. I do know that a different Ice Devimon appears in Digimon Frontier later on. When we get to that season, he appears there and is also like a decent threat there, but I'll get to him much later when I eventually get to Digimon Frontier. But what ends up happening is Takato and Henry and their Digimon show up. They get to where Rika is with Ice Devimon and ready to, rescue her and everything. And they get trapped in ice, and Renamon shows up, and she tries to fight against Devimon to protect Rika, but he's too powerful and kind of knocks her out. And I think he just basically is like, I'm just gonna kill her and everything. And Renamon digivolves into Cubimon, but she's still unable to defeat him, and it actually comes down to Guilmon and Terriermon escaping, and then Takato using speed and Hyper Wing in order for Guilmon to get fast enough and strong enough to be able to defeat Ice Devimon with his Pyro Spear attack, and then he absorbs the data. What ends up happening, and what I mean by like Riki goes like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, in regards to like her relationship with Renamon with this, is she just literally went through this ordeal where this other Digimon showed up, tried to take her away from Renamon, prove that they were stronger than Renamon to a degree, and Rika just kind of, because Rika, of course, for the most of her life, given her relationship with her mother and grandmother, has kind of also always been a little bit detached from some of her emotions, or not completely wanting to feel all of her emotions. And I go to a much more about that in the Rika discussion video that I did. And Rika just ends up like going, no, and she like, she's just like, I don't want anything to do with Digimon ever again. She doesn't want Renamon to be her friend anymore. And she just like goes home and she throws away her cards and her Digivice into the trash. And then we get like an episode or two where we have kind of Rika, just like not wanting anything to do with the Digimon or anything like that. And I think Takato and Henry kind of try to figure out a way to like make her feel better, but it doesn't go very well. But the next bio-emerged Digimon that they have is Musyamon, who is basically, he's based off of like a samurai type of a thing, giant sword, armor, stuff like that. Don't mind his design. I think there's another version of him that pops up in one of the Digimon Adventures 2.0 episodes partway through the season, that he appears in the real world, if I remember correctly. But Masuyamon ends up, bio-emerges in the real world, and he ends up Hypnos actually, I think Hypnos thought that they destroyed him with the Yugoth program before he could emerge, but that didn't actually happen. He ends up reforming, and he does end up emerging, and Takato and Guilmon are there, and they end up defeating him, and there's like, I think, a little girl that they have to protect, because I think his kind of like emergence cloud appears in the middle of like this busy intersection, and of course nobody pays attention to it. And like they defeat him and they save the little girl and everything. I think he actually tried to kill the little girl, in all honesty, which most of the Digimon that tend to bio-emerge into the real world most of them end up actually just kind of wanting to go on a rampage because, as I stated I think I stated this when I was discussing the digital world video itself for Digimon Tamers world, that world seems to be a bit more on the wild side than what we see when it comes to like the Digimon Adventures world. This is a bit less of a civilized world. These are Digimon that are much more focused on either barely surviving in certain cases or ones that are just like strong and high and mighty and everything like that. And these Digimon that are bio-emerging into the real world, they're doing it in an attempt to get stronger. They somehow ended up there, and they ended up in a strange world. They kind of got the reverse of an isekai, or they basically get isekai into our world, and some of them handle it better than others. Some of them intentionally try to come here. Some of them, like Ice Devimon intentionally tried to come here. Masuramon, not so much, but he still ended up here and he doesn't know what's going on. He ended up in this strange area that is very different than what he's ever been through. And one of his first interactions is this weird computer program shows up and tries to destroy him. And then he's like, okay, nope, I want revenge. But like Takato and Gilmon show up and they're able to defeat him and save the little girl, and Gilmon absorbs the data and everything. So we get those. Actually, no, it's Terriermon and Henry actually show up, and Henry's kind of gotten over his issue with like having Terriermon digivolve at this point in time. And he digivolves into Gargamon and is actually able to help protect the little girl, and then they save her. Gilmon, I think, saves the little girl's balloon, if I remember correctly, which is just adorable. And then Terriermon is the one that absorbs the data. Then we move on to like just a little like solo thing that Renamon does, because what ends up happening is I think it's a trio of these Digimon that are called Flybemon, which there's not a lot of insect Digimon that I actually care that much for. This one's not too bad. I like Honeybemon, and there's a few other ones that I really like. Admittedly, there would be an interesting thing of like me doing a tier ranking list of like all of the Digimon, but that would take forever. That would take a very long time to do a tier ranking list of just like all of the Digimon, and I'd have to break that up into sections of like the in training and baby and rookie and champion and mega and ultimate and all of these other ones of like all of these subcategories, and oh god, that would take forever. Given how many Digimon there are. It's like, there's a lot of Pokemon. There's a lot of Digimon as well. But back to Flybemon. So a trio of these things emerge on one of the baseball fields, and Renamon immediately shows up and starts trying to destroy them. And she's trying to do it without having Rika help her, because at this point in time, Rika, of course, doesn't want anything to do with Renamon. And I think Takato and Gilmon show up and they try to help Renamon, but Renamon's just like, no. Or Henry showed up. One of the two, Takato or Henry, show up to try to help Renamon with their Digimon. And Renamon just doesn't want anything to do with that. She actually ends up getting like stabbed with one of the stingers from the Flybemon, and it kind of weakens her, but she's still then able to like attack them and destroy them. And she absorbs their data and everything. She's able to destroy all three of them on her own. And she kind of has this moment where she's like, I can do this without Rika. I don't need Rika for this. So it's like, again, it's, Rika and Renamon. Renamon is not particularly all that in touch with her emotions as well. So there's that there. So there's that fun bit there. So it's both Rika and Renamon being emotionally constipated. And I don't remember if Rika actually shows up and sees part of that fight and sees that Renamon's able to handle it on her own or not. I don't remember, but I think that's something that happens. And then we have Harpymon, which I actually, again, I like Harpymon's design. I think it's pretty good. I think it is a reference to when... Is it when Gatomon digivolves using the Digi-Egg of Knowledge? That might be what, or the Digi-Egg of... knowledge, possibly. I don't remember exactly, but it's one of the it's technically qualifies as one of the armored Digivolutions for like that reference back to like Digimon Adventures 2.0 with the armored Digivolutions there. I think it's in one of the armored Digimon videos I did. But so Harpymon shows up. She bioemerges into the real world, and Renamon shows up and is trying to fight her. And what ends up happening is Rika, like this is happening late at night, and Rika, like her Digivice is like beeping and going off, and Calamon actually like dug it out of the trash and like gave it to Rika. And Rika reads it and she sees that Renamon's in trouble, and she just like goes. It's like instinct. She goes and goes to where Renamon is, and she sees Renamon fighting with Harpymon. And Rika thinks that Renamon is doing fine dealing with Harpymon on her own. It's just like, oh, she doesn't need me anymore. I don't serve a purpose for her anymore. And Harpymon actually ends up getting Renamon, with a really good attack and causing a bit of damage. And, she tries to claw at her and everything. And Rika, again, just acting on instinct at one point in time, picks up this stick, runs up behind Harpymon and, like, stabs Harpymon in the back with this, like, sharp stick. Sharp broken branch and, like, stabs Harpymon in the back with it. And then Harpymon tries to attack Rika, and Renamon protects her, and that results in, of course, Renamon digivolving into Cubimon for the second time. And she's very quickly able to destroy Harpymon with her Foxtail Inferno. But then she does not absorb the data. She does not absorb the data from Harpymon. And she looks at Rika, and Rika's like, well, why didn't you absorb her data? And Renamon's like, I don't need her data. I need you. You are what I need. You are my tamer. So I do kind of like that, like, going through, like, these Digimon kind of show, like, this progression in regards to the relationship that the Tamers have with their own Digimon. Because it's like, well, the whole point of these Digimon throughout the course of the series, throughout the first part of the series, is to have it that, like, the Tamers are learning how to interact with their Digimon and with each other, and helping them get past some of those different, internal emotional barriers in certain cases. Ones that they were self-imposed, others that were imposed on them by others, and stuff like that, and getting past that. Then we have Dark Lizardmon. Again, I really like this one's design. So Dark Lizardmon is actually one of these odd cases. So bioemerges, and Takato and Guilmon show up, and they defeat her. And before they're able to actually full-on destroy her, Hypnos shows up. Yamaki shows up with Hypnos and, like, commandeers Dark Lizardmon and, like, takes her away. And they basically use her as an experiment at Hypnos headquarters. And I feel so sorry for her during this because, like, oh God, I just feel so sorry for her because she's used as an experiment. They torture her during this time frame. Again, I think I go over this in Yamaki and the Hypnos videos. Yamaki is still at this point in time where he just sees Digimon as this stain, as this infection, as these things that aren't worth being alive. He doesn't see them fully as living creatures anymore. And they experiment on Dark Lizardmon. And, like, they, go through all of these different experiments with her, with, figuring out how to destroy her and, like, scanning her data and everything like that. And then she just is eventually destroyed because of how much they put her through. And I just feel so, so sorry for her. God, I feel sorry for her. And I think beyond the Devas, she is the last one that they actually end up interacting with. And I kind of, headcanon for me is that because of what, Dark Lizardmon went through, that kind of was a catalyst for why the Devas started showing up. That, like, they kind of were able to, like, observe that the humans did this to one of the Digimon, and they're like, okay, this has gone too far. And that's when they start sending in the Devas. That's when Chuchaomon starts sending in the Devas to try to get Calamon. Try to, stop Hypnos and destroy the kids and get Calamon. So now we're moving into the two Digimon movies. So the first Digimon movie that we're going to talk about is Digimon Battle of Adventure, which there's kind of one long going Digimon that pops up in this one, and that is so the beginning of the movie starts with Apocalypse being chased by Omnimon, being hunted down by Omnimon. And Apocalypse, whether or not this is supposed to be the exact same Apocalypse that's, hinted at in the Digimon Adventures stuff at the end of the first season of Digimon Adventures that they have to deal with after the Dark Masters are destroyed, is debatable. Although this one is probably also complete with hot and cold running water. In all honesty, I would hope that's the standard feature on your, Apocalypse. It seems like a decent feature to have. Callback joke. And Apocalypse is being chased and it ends up getting, attacked and almost destroyed by Omnimon, and then it reformats its data, and then that data ends up going into the real world. And that data ends up forming into Mephistomon, which, one second. Okay. My light switch went down a little bit. And that ends up forming into Mephistomon. And Mephistomon has formed this whole plan, and he ends up masquerading as this human, Ryuji Tamashiro. And whether or not he had this whole disguise set up beforehand or whatever, I don't know, but he, is able to impersonate the human. We are having technical difficulties. I figured out the problem. I have the wrong cord plugged in, but we should be fine now. Well, doesn't help that I have like 3 different USB cords that all look the same right by where they get plugged in. Sorry. So, Mephistomon turns into Tamashiro, and he ends up developing these V-Pets. VP laboratories and everything like that, and develops these V-Pets that end up becoming this huge popular thing all over Japan at that point in time. We see Susie has one, Rika's grandma has one. They end up all over the place. And these things end up, they're very popular. And then, Tamashiro ends up becoming like this big celebrity. And when Takato goes to visit his cousin, go to visit Kai, he ends up actually, Kai and Takato end up running into him at the airport. And he ends up being a little bit of a jerk, but, just kind of playing it off and everything, as happens. And we then see him later on. It is revealed that, they meet May and, Minami, and everything happens there with Caesarmon and all of that. And they, Takato and Kai, and then results in like Henry and Rika end up there as well, because Omnimon is like going through and like finds the two, finds Rika and Henry and like brings them back to where Takato is, so that way they can like help Takato. And what ends up happening is, I'm sorry for the light, it's being weird today, I'm sorry. And what ends up happening is Tamashiro, along with Minami's father, are being held captive by these other Digimon, and they end up, Minami's father gets away and goes to try to save Minami, and then Tamashiro ends up revealing that, oh no, I've been a Digimon this entire time. I am the one that caused all of these issues and everything. And he releases like this code that makes all of the V-Pets actually go haywire and start causing, they act as a vaccine, or they act as this virus, and they start just causing all this problems all over the world at the same time. And his intention is to get Labramon, Labramon, get that, because there's a code inside of Labramon that can like fix what's going on, and he wants to destroy that. So he takes that and ends up, revealing himself to be, I am Mephistomon. He's based off of like a giant goat. It's based off of like the different like goat demon deity type things that have been depicted for a long time and stuff like that, because like goats have like a connection to the devil in certain societies and stuff like that, and I think Christian and Jewish mythology at times. And so he's there, and he ends up, he ends up fighting with Takato and Rika and Henry and all of that, and causing issues there. And they end up going into like the weird underwater area type thing. And then he ends up digivolving into Gulfmon, which is again references to some of these different depictions of like different ancient beasts and stuff like that from different mythology that are different representations of the devil and demons and stuff like that. Again, really like his design. Golfmon's or Mephistomon's design I do like quite a bit as well. But we have him as Golfmon, and he ends up, his mega form, and he ends up, fighting against the Tamers and their Digimon, and he ends up getting destroyed when the Tamers end up using Trinity Burst or Trinity Force, depending on how you want to put it. And, they combine their power and destroy him. And then, of course, via Labbermon's power and stuff like that, they're able to, like, destroy all of the different V-Pets that are causing problems that, like, turn into these little gremlin-looking demon things. And they go through all of that. And Golfmon is impaled and destroyed. And everything gets to go back to normal. Now we have the last set. So these ones are from Digimon Adventures Runaway Locomon, the second movie that they did. And we have Locomon / Grand Locomon, and then we have Parasimon. So first off, we have Locomon, who bioemerges into the real world, and he starts just driving around on the track around Tokyo, on the train system there. And he's like going around and around. I don't think he actually makes a full round, but he goes, he's going around fast enough, I guess, that he's causing this, giant digital gate to appear in the sky. Causes this giant digital gate to appear in the sky, and Takato and Gilmon and Rika and Renamon and Henry and Terriermon and Beelzemon and a bunch of the other ones are all trying to, stop the Locomon and everything, and like Yamaki and Hypnos and all of them are like trying to, figure out what they can do to like stop this, stop Locomon and everything. And it ends up revealing that Locomon is being controlled by this Digimon called Parasimon, which is based off of a parasite. Also ends up, one of them ends up also like hijacking Rika and kind of manipulating her, controlling her. Parasimon are disturbing and disgusting looking. And, so one of them, like the giant one, is like controlling Locomon and then like forces it to like digivolve into Grand Locomon. Which, side note, I love the fact that the guy that they have voicing Locomon have him kind of speak in the style of Johnny Cash, which is just kind of fun. I just kind of like that. Because I like the way that Grand Locomon and Locomon talk throughout the course of the movie. I mean, like, they are kind of like, they're being manipulated by the Parasimon, because it's the Parasimon's intent is to have Locomon open up this giant portal, and they succeed, and all of these different other Parasimon come falling down out of the portal, and their intention is to have them, like, I guess, take control of the other Digimon and the Tamers and everybody in the city or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, you at least had some form of a plan. You guys, Mephistomon, you guys had a bit of a plan, so you guys did a good job there. You guys get passes there. You guys attempted something. And it partially succeeded, but you still lost. Because what ends up happening is, of course, Takato and Rika and Henry and Rio all end up, they biomerge with their Digimon, and they defeat all of the different Parasimon and destroy the big one and everything. And, all of that fun stuff, and Locomon gets sent back to the digital world. He reverts to Locomon, Grand Locomon reverts back to Locomon, and he goes back to the digital world, and I think we have like a little end scene that just like him just chugging along in the digital world. I really like Locomon and Grand Locomon are just kind of fun. I just kind of liked them a lot. So I enjoyed that for whatever it was worth. I liked them in the series. In the movie, they were just like fun. They're villains that are not meant to be a villain. They're ones that is being manipulated. And then, of course, so it's like that's kind of like I like how they set that up, where it was like Parasimon, who was this much more weaker of a Digimon, somehow took over this other Digimon because that's the way that they're designed to work, and they're able to take them over, and they're able to then, use Locomon to do what it wanted to do. And nearly succeeded. Technically did succeed, but still lost because it got defeated. So that's what we have for those Digimon, for all the different bio-emerged Digimon that they end up dealing with. As I said, some of the other videos coming up will probably be about the Devas. And I was trying to figure out if there were some other ones that I needed to talk about. Obviously the D Reaper, but that'll be a little bit more of like a later on thing once I get the rest of the Devas taken care of. So that's what we have. I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of the day, and hopefully I can get the lighting fixture figured out. So bye.